There are so many different philosophies on how to best tour a theme park, but one thing I would argue for is the importance of rope dropping. I'm going to try to defend that claim in this video, but first, let's defend what I mean when I say the word rope drop. We'll define rope drop as being at the place of entry no later than the official park opening time. I say place of entry because a lot of parks will open the gate early, and you can go into the park, but you can't go very far. You'll actually be stopped at a rope or another place where then you are held for a little while, and then at official park opening time, you are let loose. I would also say this is the bare minimum definition of rope drop. For smaller, more local parks, I would always prefer to be 15 to 30 minutes early. But for a destination park, I would definitely prefer to be 30 to 60 minutes early. And it really depends on what specific park you're going to as to how early you should get there. For an example, let's use Disneyland. Park opening time is always 8 a.m. However, they open the gate at 7:30 and security at 7. By that standard, I would say that you should arrive no later than 7 if you want to be at the front of the pack. So, why rope drop? Here are some reasons. Number 1, you beat the crowds. For certain parks, it really doesn't matter hugely like smaller local parks. But for destination parks or larger chain parks, you really need to be at the front of the pack if you want to get multiple laps on your favorite rides. Additionally, this is true if you don't want to pay for a paid skip the line system. I think it's pretty straightforward to point out that at the very beginning of the day, there's going to likely be the least amount of people in the park at that time. And the reality is, many people don't get to the park early for a variety of reasons, whether it's because it's too early because they want to sleep in, or they have little kids, or there's a traffic delay. Any of these things can cause people to show up late. And so in the meantime, you're one of the first ones on your favorite ride. A second reason that goes with the first of beating the crowds is that it's, well, less crowded, but also less stressful. I'm a huge theme park fan, obviously. But even for me, when certain parks are crazy busy, it can be pretty overwhelming and pretty stressful. And while it's not guaranteed that you'll have empty footpaths at the beginning of the day, it's likely the best opportunity you're going to have for that. Generally, as the amount of people in the park increases, so too does the stress level. Why? Well, there's longer lines, there's busier footpaths, and if things break down or things get delayed, it always seems worse when it's busy. All these things are less likely to be an issue at the start of the day. Number 3, and this isn't a super tangible thing necessarily, but I would just say you can enjoy morning time in the park. Sometimes lighting is really cool or fog is really cool. And for really busy parks, you don't always really get to see the park. When there are thousands of people cramming each and every square foot, it's hard to notice theming details and such, and you can notice this better when there's less people. Another reason is that for warmer climates, you get to enjoy cooler weather at the start of the day. Again, as much as I love theme parks, sometimes a crowded, hot park in the afternoon is really not that fun. Especially because some parks do this a lot better than other parks. Shade is not always readily available. While there are many theme parks out there that put a large emphasis on natural beauty and natural shade, there are also quite a few that have absolutely zero shade. And I gotta tell you, in a hot and crowded environment, these are not very enjoyable to be in the summer. Nudge nudge, a lot of Six Flags parks, unfortunately. Another pretty axiomatic reason to rope drop, and that is, you literally get more time in the park. If the park opens at 10 and you get there at 11, you lose an hour of operation. And if you're staying open to close, or at least when you get there to when the park closes, you gain more time by being there for the whole time they're open. It does partly depend on what you value. I'm always someone that wants to be in a park as long as I can, to see as much of it as I can, to ride as much as I can. But there are others that are content with taking a lap or so around the park, riding the major rides, riding the major roller coasters, and then dipping early. And sometimes that's needed, especially if you're on a road trip and you're trying to get to the next place, but I don't think it's ideal, especially if you really want to see what a park is like. It's also important when parks have shorter hours. For example, Silverwood Theme Park during the summer is often open from just 11 to 6. So if you get there late, you're already losing that time, and it's only 7 hours to begin with. This is also true for a lot of European theme parks that, even in the heat of summer, are only open for 6 hours. Again, depends on where you're going, but if you lose a significant amount of time from 6 hours, you are all of a sudden doing it with a very small amount of time. That's all I'm saying. Here's my last big reason for rope dropping. How about parking lot traffic? Some of you joke that I include this as a legitimate reason, but really, I think this is totally valid, because parking lots at theme parks can not only fill up very quickly, but they can also be very confusing. You would hope that theme parks would make it extremely clear where you're supposed to go and where you're supposed to park. And while this is often the case, there are definitely exceptions to that rule, where it is not totally clear if you were supposed to take a turn right or take a turn left. some parks certainly have more confusing parking lot setups than others. Another thing is that the earlier you arrive, the less you're going to have to walk back to your car. And while that seems super silly, again, for certain parks, it actually does add a significant amount of time to your walk at the end of the day. Let me just tell you, for example, walking from the back corner of Six Flags Magic Mountain's parking lot to the front entrance takes some time, for sure. Now, when possible, which this is pretty much possible for every theme park in 2025, an important prerequisite for rope dropping properly is to buy your tickets online. Standing at the physical ticket booth and getting your ticket there could potentially add a lot of time to your morning when you really don't need it when you can just scan in with your prepaid online ticket. I'll also say there are quite a few parks out there that don't even really have an option to buy it in person, so sometimes you're pretty much required to buy it online. It's also usually cheaper to buy it online, so I'd always suggest get your tickets ahead of time. Then you also really have to decide what you're going to do once you get inside the park, because just because you're in the park early doesn't necessarily mean you use that time well. We'd always say try to hit a notable ride. Now, you have to decide what type of ride you want to hit. First, you could hit a ride that is low capacity. Think of roller coasters that have 4-person trains, like Mauer spinning coasters, or pretty much any Wild Mouse coaster. These rides can build up lines not because they're super popular, but because the lines move slow and they're low capacity vehicles. And the reality is that these lines are going to move slower throughout the entire day. So if you wait 15 minutes for it, that's a lot better than waiting 40 minutes for it at 4 in the afternoon. You can also go for the most popular main ride in the park. And this one I think you have to be really careful with, because sometimes if you're not at the very front of the pack, you can get caught in a really long line early in the day, and then you lose all the benefit of rope dropping essentially. But it is worth keeping in mind, especially if you're really at the front. As a slight rebuttal though, it's also true that at a lot of parks, the most popular rides will get a big line at the beginning of the day, hold it for a little while, and then drop off a little bit in the afternoon. This isn't always the case, but this is often the case. So while everyone gets stuck in that big line in the first hour of the day, you are already riding multiple other attractions throughout the park. From my experience, from what I've seen, and in my opinion, I think hitting the low capacity rides first is usually the best policy. So at the end of the day, I think rope dropping is a really important piece of doing a theme park well. I've given you some reasons why, and the reality is that for a lot of the bigger parks out there, lines are going to exist throughout the day. So take advantage of it when they're somewhat shorter in those morning hours. And oh, by the way, for the parks that have super long hours, talking like 16 hours for Disney parks and such, I would also recommend if you need to take a break, not necessarily not rope dropping or not staying till close, you can take your nap in the afternoon. The afternoon is the worst time of day at a theme park anyway, but make sure you come back for that night portion, because again, for parks that have long hours, lines will go down at the end of the day. The first 2 hours and the last 2 hours are your prime hours. And whenever possible, take advantage of theme parks even being open till night, because like I mentioned earlier, European theme parks and a lot of other seasonal parks don't really have this ability. If you have any rebuttals to the idea of rope dropping, please kindly let me know in the comment section below. But until next time, have a great rest of your day. We'll see you then.